And then what we do, that I came up with this years ago, is we conditionally assign the beneficial interest. So it goes into a land trust where the seller is the beneficiary. The seller then conditionally, right there at closing, in the blink of an eye, they conditionally assign their beneficial interest to you as the buyer, the investor. And it's done on the condition. They assign it to you on the condition that you continue to pay their mortgage and keep and taxes and insurance. And typically in our agreement, if 90 days goes by and you have not paid for 90 days, they have to give you a notice, another 30 days passes, and if you still don't pay, they come to us and they say, here's all the proof. They have not paid for 90 days. I gave them notice. I waited 30 days. They have still not paid. It's mine again. And we go, yep, it's yours. You take it back. I do this because I had a very bad situation years ago where I had a very unscrupulous guy. I wouldn't even call him an investor. He was just a creep. And he bought this house subject to, and I'd done subject to closings left and right, and we were the trustee, no big deal. And he got their property, basically stripped the equity out of it, and never paid them, didn't pay the mortgage payments. And these people had good credit. They were just selling the house because they were elderly and had to move to be closer to their children and their grandchildren. And it was in a bad economy, and they couldn't sell it any other way other than a short sale. So they said, hey, look, this guy's agreed. He's going to buy. He's going to pay our mortgage. Okay, fine. It was 2 years of hell for me as the trustee. Those poor old people were in our office monthly crying, threatening to sue me sometimes, threatening to report me to the bar sometimes, and all this other stuff. So I said, okay, look, here's what I'm going to do from now on. And this had to have been probably 2008, 2009. From now on, we'll do it this way. We conditionally assign. That way, if anybody ever does this again, if another creep comes in, the sellers can say, I'm taking my property back, get them out. But what we found is our clients who do this method, one of the biggest objections that they kept running into when they would approach a seller and say, hey, I want to buy your property and I'm just going to take over your mortgage. I'll pay your mortgage for you. You move on, you go on, do what you want to do. I'll take over paying your mortgage. Biggest objection, how do I know you're going to pay it? How do I know you're not going to pay it and destroy my credit? What happens if you die? What happens if you disappear? What happens if you go to jail? What happens if you're run over and turn into a vegetable? Valid points. Okay, no worries. You can take the property back. If this happens and my family doesn't step up and keep making the payments on your mortgage and keep doing what they're supposed to do, you can get the property back. Funny story, we had a client who they bought a property on subject to, and they held it about 7 or 8 years. And eventually, and we'd done this, the same thing, and they stopped paying. After a while, they couldn't get tenants anymore. They were tired of keeping the house up. They're like, look, we've made good money off this house. Just let it go. We're just going to let it go into foreclosure. The seller died, so he didn't care. It wasn't going to wreck his credit. He's underground now, literally. And so it goes through foreclosure and gets foreclosed. And I get the notice from the court that there's like $20-something thousand surplus left over from the foreclosure because a third-party bidder bought it and they overpaid what was due. So I call the beneficiary and I go, hey, there's $20-something thousand left over. Do you want me to get it? He said, on what? And I told him the property, and he said, we totally forgot about that property. He said, we stopped paying mortgage on it years ago. We were just letting it go. We'd made all our money. I said, well, I can get you this $20,000. You want it? And he said, yeah. I said, okay. I said, I'll charge you, I think, $2,500. So I charged him $2,500. I got him $20,000. He was happy. Money out of the blue. Wasn't expecting. So sometimes it happens, but it was done this way. So if at any time the seller had come back, if they'd been alive, the seller could have come back and said, hey, they're not paying my mortgage. I want the property back. I probably would have called him and said, why are you not paying the mortgage? They would have said, oh yeah, just let him have it. We're done anyway. But it helps the seller protect their credit rating a little bit and gives them that, gives the buyer that objection overcoming means there that they can use. So again, it gives the buyer a level of confidence. It protects the buyer from seller claims of undue influence. That's another thing. A lot of times we have handled closings where it was subject to, and then a month or two later, the kids of grandma and grandpa who sold the house subject to come in and they're screaming at us, how dare you close this? These people took advantage of my parents and all this. And we can go, well, talk to your grandparents, but they were protected and they understood what they were doing. Also protects the seller from unscrupulous buyers. Again, it hides the purchase price. Because it is a conditional assignment of beneficial interest, the seller is the initial beneficiary. They assign their beneficial interest to the buyer conditionally, but that's an unrecorded instrument, so documentary taxes go straight to the Department of Revenue. They don't go to the property appraiser. So on the public record, it looks like it was just a sale for 70 cents. It looks like the seller simply transferred the property into a land trust for themselves, which technically they did. Segregates the liability from the other assets owned by the investor. Also, potential benefits on arguing about the deal on sale. If that happens to come up, we'll get to that in a minute. Plus all the other benefits that I went over earlier of owning the property inside the land trust. Now, documentary taxes, again, I tell you, I'm an expert on this, so I like to talk about it because I know what I'm doing. But they must be paid based on the outstanding amount due, but again, they're hidden inside the land trust via the assignment of beneficial interest, and we pay those directly to the Department of Revenue on each deal. We pay on each deal. We could pay monthly, and the department may come at us at some point and say, hey, you just have to make one big payment a month, which would be even better for us. But right now, each deal we pay the doc tax to the department. But once we've paid so much over so many months, they will tell us, you're not paying on each deal, you just send us one big check every month with one form, which makes it great for the beneficiaries, because then it really has no tie to them whatsoever. It's just one big check coming in saying, we collected this much, we pay you this much, and that's all the department wants. Due on sale, the disadvantage of the due on sale clause. So if the property is secured by a mortgage, especially if it's a conventional bank mortgage, pretty much any mortgage since 1978, 1979, will have a due on sale clause in it. What happened was, in the back days, back in the stagflation, when interest rates were 17, 18% on mortgages, people couldn't sell their homes. So they were just selling them, you know, if you had a mortgage at 15%, people would buy your home and just take over your mortgage. And back then, the banks didn't have a due on sale clause in their mortgage, so there was nothing they could do. They were stuck. So they came up with the due on sale clauses and started putting them in the mortgages. So it says that if you transfer the property to another person or entity, if you lease the property for more than a year, if you put an option on the property for more than a year to sell it, that is considered a transfer and it triggers a due on sale, meaning the lender has the right to tell you, you've got 30 days to pay me off. Either 30 days to pay me off or 30 days to put it back in the name of our borrower, and that's called triggering the due on sale. We don't like that. We don't like to hear that. We hate it when we get a phone call and they say, hey, the lender is triggering the due on sale. Okay, that's bad. Typically, I mean, it's happened to us twice over the years. Both times it was with the same beneficiary. They were simply moving each of their rental properties into separate land trusts to separate them from each other, separate them from themselves, and for estate planning purposes. And Flagstar, both times, came after them. We fought. Finally, on one of them, they said, fine, keep it the way it is. And then the next one, they screwed up, and they said, no, you can't keep this one. So finally, my client said, just put it back in my name. I'm tired of dealing with them. So we put it back in her name, and then she paid them off. Other times, clients have just borrowed money and refinanced it and paid off the loan and made it go away. So it just depends. They're different. Or they sold the property. I talked to a guy one time. He called me about it, and he's been doing subject twos since probably 1982. And he said that he's had 4 since 1982 that were called due. And he said it was typically not a big problem. All he did was refinance, or he was selling the property anyway because he was a fix and flipper. he would buy it subject to, because it's like, why go through a full closing and borrow money and buy it if I'm just going to turn around and sell it in 3 months after I fixed it up? So he'd typically sell it, but he had one that he was actually holding. He was BRRRing it, and I forget how many R's there are. He was doing that, and he called me to see what he could do to get out of it. And it ended up, he had just bought it in his LLC. So I said, well, yeah, you're screwed. So he ended up refinancing it with a private lender. So everybody always says, but how does the lender even find out? How do they find out? Well, number one, at closings, the borrowers will sign, number one, they pay a fee for tax tracking and insurance tracking now, typically at closing. And that engages a company on behalf of the servicer to watch the tax bills as they come through and to watch all insurance invoices and declarations as they come through. And Flagstar, what kicked them was they said, it looks like an LLC now owns this property, because it was TRSTE LLC as trustee of the, and that's how the insurance had been written. So it freaked them out, and they said, we don't lend to LLCs. You've got to either put it back or pay us off. And so that's how they found out. Sometimes on the tax bill, when the tax bill comes through, they find it. So what we recommend people do is you're typically going to want to name the land trust something with the last name of the current owner, and then something else after that, and then make sure your insurance and the tax bills and everything show up as the Seagel 123 Land Trust Service Corporation, its trustee, or with Land Trust Service Corporation as its trustee, or TRSTE as its trustee. You're going to want to show it that way, because then the trust shows up first on all the documents, and coming through, they're going to see the last name and they're going to go, oh, okay, that's not going to trigger them that bad. The other way it gets triggered is you stop paying. That typically doesn't. We have one client, he just got wrapped up in it, and it was because of that. The loan was in arrears, and they got a reinstatement fee. They paid the reinstatement at closing and at the subject to closing, but the money did not get sent to the lender in time. And so then a lot of people started looking at the property and the loan and what was going on, and it just was ugly. That's another thing I just want to do as an aside. A lot of times when you're buying property subject to the loan, it is in foreclosure or almost in foreclosure. So you have to either comply with the Foreclosure Rescue Act of Florida's requirements, which requires a lot of 12, 14 point, all caps, bold type on a notice, and all this other stuff that goes along with it. And if you don't, it could be at least a misdemeanor, if not a felony. So, or simpler, just reinstate the mortgage at the closing, and now it's not in foreclosure. Problem solved. So we've always told our folks, get a full reinstatement fee. Another thing we recommend at subject to closings, order a payoff. I can't tell you, and actually the newsletter that comes out tomorrow morning at 8:15 has a story in it. The first lead story is about zombie mortgages coming back. Well, there's zombie mortgages, and then there's zombie silent seconds, where at some point in the past, there was a modification of the mortgage, and the lender goes, oh, well, here's $40,000. We're just going to pull it off to the side and everybody forget about it for a while. It won't run interest, it won't run anything. So you are looking at the mortgage statement of this property. You're looking at buying subject to, and that mortgage statement says, oh, $100,000 is great. It's worth about $180,000. So I got $80,000 in equity as soon as I buy it. But if you order the payoff, they're going to show $140,000 as the payoff, because they're going to show that holdback or that they've had in there, that in abeyance. Now you're going to go, wait a minute, now I've only got $40,000 in equity. A little tighter now. I can't tell you how many times when we were doing subject to closings in my title agencies, when I had title agencies, we would always order the payoff, and at least 2 or 3 times a year that payoff would come in with a lot higher number on it than what was showing on that latest monthly mortgage statement. So always get that.